What's up, everybody? Welcome to the CONJSports podcast, a part of MIRE Media. Pretty excited to bring on our guest this evening, a good friend of mine. I'll introduce him in a second, but I thought it was pretty relevant that in a week where there was some moderate controversy in the NFL surrounding the officiating, that I bring on one of the people who I believe is one of the best officials on planet Earth. So without further ado, let me introduce you to my friend, PJ Calello. He is the vice president of NILOA, that's the National Intercollegiate, Lacrosse Officials Association. PJ, how are you, man?
Good, buddy. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. It wasn't just a coincidence that all of a sudden in 2019, like a couple of guys didn't get together and say, you know, we're not really happy that all these guys are holding each other. So let's make a decision on our own here to make these calls, because there's a thing that, you know, we often joke about, though it's the farthest thing from a joke, that we call industry backing. And, well, when we get these kind of edicts to, well, we want you to focus on this, or here's a point of emphasis for you, and I'll do whatever you want, but what's it going to do to the end of my season? Do I have industry backing on this? When everyone gets upset that I do this, who's got my back? I just couldn't let go of that feeling when this whole moderate controversy was happening. And you'd have to think that the officials had industry backing to be calling holding the way they were, and then likewise industry backing to stop.
Well, right. That's 100% right. No one who expects to have any sort of longevity. Why don't we say it that way?
Good point.
And I do think it's important for most people to understand that certainly we are not officiating for the popularity of what the fans think is and is not a foul. You're not really officiating for what the coaches or players do or do not think is a foul. You're officiating for your boss. You're working for your boss as you would be in any other profession. I'm doing what my boss has asked me to do. And that is why, and if your boss continues to say, I don't care how upset the fans were, I don't care how upset the coaches were, we want you to keep doing what you're doing a good job, then I know I'm still going to have a job. And I think that what happened last week, I think, was a very clear picture of, somehow communication broke down, or somehow what people thought they were agreeing to is not what they agreed to. And we've seen a lot of that too. What they think they wrote, because sometimes so much of this is not so much in the play on the field, but the English that is written on the page. They think this is what they want. They wrote it a certain way. We go out on the field and call it the way it's written, and then once they see it, they say to themselves, okay, we understand how you got to that place, but we need to change the wording here because what we wrote is not necessarily what we meant.
Exactly.
And certainly in my 25 years of doing this, I have run into that situation many, many times over 25 years. I've often said in the sport of lacrosse, when we have new rules, just wait until about week 3 of the regular season to see how much of this sticks and how much of this gets altered. And it's mostly having to do with the written word first and foremost. How did they write it, and how is it interpreted?
It's the law of unintended consequences, and you pour over all of it to try to say, let's rack our brains to see what are the offshoots that we're just not thinking of here that are going to impact this. And I think you're seeing, we could go and talk all day and bore everybody to death about the law of unintended consequences that came from the interpretation of the dive rule in lacrosse last year, but about 4 people in America would think that was interesting. But if you're seeing it in the NFL with this new pass interference being able to be challenged, I'm loath to call it a rule, an allowance, I guess, for the coaches, that you're seeing something happen down the field, which is the thing that was challenged by the coach. But oops, there's actually offensive pass interference 3.5 yards from the line of scrimmage that we now have to enforce, even though you wanted nothing to do with that. And maybe as an offense, you have challenged defensive PI, but offensive PI ends up coming out of the play because we're just reviewing the whole thing. I can't imagine that is what they wanted out of this.
And that's okay. That is part of sport. That's been part of sport for as long as there's been sport. I'm going to try and do all that I can, barely within the confines of the rule. I'm going to see where the line is, and then I'm going to decide to walk all over that line, and as long as I can't get caught. And I think that we're still learning a little bit about how that is going to affect this particular situation. And that's okay. I think that the first 4 weeks, the first quarter of any season is always going to be a little bit messy. And then I do think a big part of this too is they think that they can get a lot of these rules ironed out in the preseason, but the reality is the game speed is so different in the preseason from week one, from when it all means something, that even the officials in the league don't get a truly accurate view of what it is that they're going to be seeing and processing in even the time that they're seeing and processing it. And then add to all of those algorithms broadcasting and television. And yes, we want you to be able to challenge it, but we also want you to be able to do those things within whatever the allowable window is that we want to broadcast this particular event within. So we want to get it right, but we want to get it right in 3 hours and 5 minutes. We want to get it right, but we want to get it right in a 2-hour time slot for hoops or lacrosse. And unfortunately, that certainly is a big part of it. And that is something that, we want to get it right, but we don't necessarily want people sitting there for the 4, 5, 6, 7 minutes with the 12 different film angles that it may take in order to get it right.
Well, there's something that you said to me, years and years ago as we talk about these things and we watch video because we're trying to be perfectionists. And I should say before I even get to that like I don't hate replay as an official out on the field. I ultimately want to get it right, but when it comes to replay, the fact that it might take them 3 minutes to make a decision. You had said to me way back when that if you have to watch it more than twice, are you really confident you're going to come up with something that makes sense out of that? If you clear and obvious should mean clear and obvious. Watch it twice. If you go, oh, yeah, that's obviously incorrect. Now maybe you stick with it to find the finer points. So the fact that they're going to commercial and we're taking 3 and 4 minutes to get some of this done, it doesn't quite sit right with me because anything in slow motion, anything on a freeze frame can look some kind of way. And as you well know, at 1,000 miles an hour, we're not only judging, well, was there some contact to the guy's head? Probably. Did it have any effect on anything that happened? That's a thing that I feel like we have to judge and the NFL officials have to judge.
Well, I think a few things about replay. First of all, I'll watch something more than 2 or 3 times to try 2 or 3 times. The stress level goes away because you start to realize exactly what you just said, which is if it's that hard to find on replay, then you got to stop beating yourself up. The second thing is we all want to get it right. We don't want to be taught. We don't want the conversation the day after to be about us. Most officials were, in some way, shape, or form, competitive athletes. Certainly not at the level that we officiate in most cases. But we're competitive. We know what it is to compete. We know what it is to practice. We know what it is to work hard for something. And that truly, any official worth his salt who's been doing this for any length of time really wants the right team or the right player to win. So if we can get it right, we want to get it right. The thing that is also hard about replay and helpful about replay is there are angles that an on-field, on-court official is just never going to have. And certainly if we can get it right in a proper time frame with the camera that is perched on top of the backboard, or the eye in the sky in a football game that's strapped to those cables that flies down the field with these athletes, that is an angle that we don't have. And I laugh a lot of times when I'm watching games with friends and someone will say, oh, look at that, they missed the call. And I'll say to myself, that particular camera angle that you're looking at is not a camera angle that is shared by any human being that is refereeing, umpiring, or officiating the contest that you're watching. That's a camera that's perched 25 yards in the air that we just don't have that view. And we're never going to be able to solve that issue. And I think that is the most valuable part of replay, because it's giving us additional sets of eyes that we wouldn't otherwise have.
And not everybody's watching the same thing. That's the thing that, a lot of people don't really realize. We joke out on the lacrosse field, I only watch a third of the game because I'm only seeing the third that I'm supposed to be looking at. But, again,
sure, I actually thought that was interesting about last year's NFC final game. The number of people that took exception with the crew chief on not having got involved in the pass interference play that everyone remembers between New Orleans and the Rams, and I'm thinking to myself, the crew chief's job was the quarterback.
Yeah, he has no idea what happened down there.
He has no idea. Not only doesn't he know what happened, but if he knew what happened, it would be clear evidence that he wasn't doing his job.
Right, exactly.
I think that is whether it's really any sport. The guys that are watching offsides in soccer, that's all they're watching is offsides, and they really shouldn't be watching anything else. And the guys that are watching, they break that field up in 100 pieces in a football game, and they try and get different angles and different eyes on every play, and hopefully they can get one view from one side and one view from the other. But if those two guys or those two officials, men or women, are screened or not seeing it or missing it, you're on your own. You're on your own, because the other five guys out there are not looking at that part of the field, and nor should they. Nor
should they be. Now I'll travel down this road with you, because I think that this isn't a thing that the normal fan thinks about. Let's just say that the crew chief in New Orleans last year had interjected himself into that play, and now, certainly the mechanics of what they do out there, he's not taking a flag and throwing it like a football 35 yards down the field. It would have resulted in a conference, and then, a flag gets thrown later, which the optics of that are not good. But if he had done that, and let's just say, God forbid, he was wrong, now all of a sudden you say, we have a guy who not only wasn't doing his job, but then thought that he could see better from 40 yards away between probably, how many, 16 300-pound guys. He could see that better than those guys down there. I mean, come on.
There are different types of infractions in all sports when you're grading officials. And Peter King wrote a wonderful, in-depth piece for a week-long about Gene Steratore crew.
Yes, fantastic.
Fantastic piece, maybe 5 or 6 years ago.
The mmqb.com will give him a free plug.
Right, tremendous, and what it talked about is how mistakes are made, and how critical we are of those mistakes, and things that you just didn't see. If you were standing in the right spot, if your mechanics were correct, if you were where you were supposed to be based upon the play, and for some reason you just missed it, the officiating world can live with that. The officiating world cannot live with you were not mechanically correct, you were looking where you weren't supposed to be looking, you were standing or not running to where you were supposed to be standing or running to. Or even worse, you were out of position and made a call that you had no business making, or you were guessing.
Just don't guess. Oh.
People who guess and people who make bad mechanical decisions are not around for very long. And if he had done what you are describing from last year in the hypothetical situation that you brought up, then that's something that you just don't. That's just someone who's then totally altered their own career as an official. I think at best, as a crew chief there, it's a conference. It's boys, let's slow this down. Why is everyone lighting their hair on fire? Is there anyone else that may have caught the tail end of this? Can we talk through what just happened? And can you please assure me that you had eyes on the play? And I think at best that's what you could have been hoping for. But look, they're big boys. They get paid a lot of money, and part of the reason they get paid that money is because they're not supposed to make mistakes like that. And I am sure 100% that no one feels worse than they do.
Yep.
No official ever wants to be remembered for just about anything, and no official wants to be remembered for blowing a call. And it's a small community, and those two poor gentlemen are going to be remembered for that for the rest of their lives. And I can assure you it is going to bother them right up and through their 80th birthdays, God willing, if that's how long they live.
One more thing for me, and then I'm going to let you run. Sure. You are one of the said by me and others to be the best game manager, probably roaming a lacrosse field on planet Earth. And you've officiated the national championship game twice, the Final Four, I don't even know how many other times. When you, and luckily or unluckily, depending on how you look at it, the last couple of years you've been involved in some wacky situations in the postseason that required a velvet glove, I would say. And those seem to be the moments in which you shine the most. Take us inside of your brain when things are at their hairiest in the biggest moments. What are you going to there to kind of get everybody back to the middle?
Well, I mean, look, it's very kind of you to say that. I think that I think there are a lot of very, very good officials that do a great job. I think when things start to get kind of crazy, and normally it has to do, when things get truly crazy, it's because something has happened, some error has happened, whether it be, timing, whether it be an injury, whether it be a wacky play, a situation that is a little bit outside of the norm. And I think that what I think about most often is when everyone else gets crazy, it is really your job to be the calmest person there. It must be your job, and you really need to simplify and just try and go back to, and not put the rule book on a shelf, but start to digest what is fair, what is truly right and fair, what is just, what is the right thing to do to make sure that the game is decided by the participants, by the kids, by the players, by the guys that are out there selling out to try and win the game. And I think if you keep in your mind what's fair, and I think if you empathize with the frustration that coaches can feel when things don't go well. Look, nobody wants to have a situation where a horn blows where it's not supposed to blow, or somebody doesn't stop a clock where they're supposed to, or a wacky play happens and a freak injury occurs, which all of a sudden sets somebody off. You need to understand that in those times, you need to calm down. You need to appreciate the fact that the emotions are off the charts. You need to humanize it a little bit, and you need to say to yourself, is what's happening here really fair? And that might take a few extra seconds, but I think it's kind of the foundation of how these decisions get made. It is to try and just be what's fair, what's just, what's the right thing to do in this situation, and how best can we explain it and understand that you are not the game, you are a steward of the game, and not be afraid to just say, this is what we're going to do, and this is why we're going to do it, and you may not agree with it, but this is how we're going to do it, and this is why we're going to do it. And if you keep that common sense idea that, someone once said to me, the rules of common sense overrule any rule in any book, in any sport. And I think many times when things start to slide sideways into chaos, it's common sense that gets us back to where we want to be.
And that's why he's one of the best out there, folks. It's my friend PJ Calello, the vice president of NILOA, which is the governing body of the collegiate officials who roam the fields for your NCAA contests at all levels. PJ, that was a lot of fun, man. I really appreciate your time. I know it's been another in a series of long days for you. So the amount of time here late at night, get inside and watch the end of the Eagles game.
All right, buddy. Take care. Have a good evening.
My pleasure. All
Bye-bye.
right, that was PJ Calello, and that was fun. So if you're interested in whatever else we got going on, head on over to CONJSports.com, and that will just about wrap it up from here in Lawrenceville. Thanks for watching.